Welcome back to In with Denoux.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome into In with the New featuring Jordan Shannon. We have a special episode today because we are together in person out in Seattle. It's June 15th. You guys will be seeing this a couple weeks from now. But it's just been so great to come out here and visit Jordan and his family in Seattle. I got the whole tourist experience, got to go around all the different neighborhoods, got to go downtown, got to get a lot of good food, got to go to the fish market, went to the baseball game today. And so we've just been having a really good time. And so, yeah, we're gonna have an episode, have a full episode. We hope that you guys enjoy it as much as we've been able to enjoy our company together. So we just wanted to also just kind of clean house a little bit and explain some things. So I know that the first few episodes you've seen, if you're watching on YouTube, you've seen these title cards that kind of pop up during the episode. And so we wanted to explain those because we kind of had some comments of like, what are these? Like, it's kind of strange, whatever. So Jordan and I, our favorite show is Frasier, which I feel like almost nobody probably watches it that's watching this podcast, but it is our favorite show. And in the show, they do title cards that break up the scenes. So basically, there's a title card that says something random, but it will have to do with something in that next scene. So if you're watching on YouTube, pay attention to the title card and you'll kind of catch the reference in the next few minutes of that next part of the podcast. So we wanted to explain that. It's supposed to be just something fun, something witty, hopefully that can kind of make you chuckle. But that's what those title cards are. So today we're going to talk a little bit about our friendship, but also authentic faith and kind of how we were able to grow our own faith from when we were younger and maybe it wasn't as authentic to when we got older in college and as adults and we were able to really take ownership of our faith. So I'm going to pass it over to Jordan that's going to talk a little bit about our friendship and then we'll go into authentic faith.
Yeah, a big thing that we had noticed in college was like we bonded very easily over like sports and stuff like that. But I think a big thing for me was coming from like I've been raised in church and I've been raised to learn about God. But I think the big thing that I struggled with within that environment was just not feeling. I didn't really feel like I had a understanding or connection of the Bible itself, and it really wasn't until I got to college I really sat down to really want to explore the Bible and what it was and what did it have to offer. And a scripture that came up that was mentioned when people would share about like friendships was David and Jonathan. In 1 Samuel 18, verse 4, and the story behind that is, David has been anointed, has been anointed king. And Saul had been rejected as king of Israel. And David is now appointed to be the next king in line. But Saul does not like him or appreciate him, and in fact is actively trying to kill him. But Saul's son Jonathan actually said that he made a covenant with David. And Saul's son Jonathan was supposed to be this, like, was next in line technically to be the king. Like when you think about oligarchy, you think about like, secession in kingdoms, right? Like he's direct in line. But he saw David as like the true king of God and actually said, you know what? No, I'm going to make a covenant with you. And I'm going to love you as myself. And it's really cool, right? Because it's really just Jonathan. There's not that many verses that mention him throughout the scriptures, right? Like you have a couple chapters in First Samuel, and David. We have all of this context and scriptures about him,
Right.
but there's this truly unique friendship and bond that these two men had that really sat with me, and it even just made me think, like, how can I find that within a relation, within a friendship with another dude, with another just bro, like, and I think I'm pretty friendly. I think Chase was I'm pretty connected,
Yeah.
but I didn't feel like I really built a lot of close friendships with people, and I think there was like I'm very I don't think I'm very transparent with a lot of people in terms of like just letting them get to know me and getting to know them. And I really discovered that about myself when I was in campus and in my college days. And so Chase and I, like, one thing that we noticed is that we were willing to really talk about some of the things that we were really feeling deeply. Like, I'm thinking back to one of the men's retreat that we had up in Jacksonville,
Hmm.
and really being able to share some things that had been on my heart or mind that I didn't, I was 19, but I didn't really feel like I had been able to talk about those things with other people, especially with just other older men. And so um, it was really powerful for me to that Chase responded to me with warmth, with care, and it really helped me to just be like, okay, this is someone I want to really like feel entrusted to talk more about these things. And that scripture kind of became the centerpiece of our friendship.
Hmm.
We even we like anytime like we would go do something that was crazy or straight or just like something that like made me feel anxious, like it was like, let's go talk to this person. I would just be like, oh, man, I don't know if I want to do that, but he would encourage me with that scripture, like, I'm with you heart and soul. I'm with you every step of the way. I'll help teach you, I'll help mentor you. And it really felt like something that he was trying to do that with the Bible and with the scriptures to help me like live out my faith. And I really appreciated that, having somebody who was going to be in that fight with me. Because like being a Christian or just being a religious person in general, it's really up to you. I think I speak for really any religious organization that could say like, um, community is what help makes it really effective.
Hmm.
And when you don't feel close to folks within that community, it really eats at you, and it really affects you, right? Like, it's really hard to live that out. And I had a good community growing up, but I also didn't feel super called to, I guess, the doctrine of that time. And now, like, I do feel more called, and I felt like I found community, and Chase has been such a big part of that for me.
Hmm.
Um, and so, like, I know we have like different stories to talk about and different ways of like how we've built that community over time. But that was a big piece of like just that scripture of like First Samuel, and something that really I wanted to define our relationship, our friendship,
Hmm.
was just this aspect of just having each other's back through it all, through difficult times, through celebrating each other's wins, but also mourning with each other when we're
Yeah.
experiencing any terrible loss. Like, I remember um, the this had to be about 10 years ago. 10 years ago, I went through a pretty rough breakup, and me and this person hadn't dated for a long time. It wasn't terribly long, but I struggled with my own mental health and depression connected to that, and I remember I had to like really lean on Chase and reach out to him just like let him know what was going on, and then it actually eroded a lot of my own faith at the time. Like, I really struggled a lot with my relationship with God, and just really finding a lot of like a lot of importance or value in it. Like, I even at one point decided to leave my church at the time, and so I'm fine talking more about that because I think that that's real. But Chase was with me even through that. It's like, he was patient with me, talked with me. He really stayed through with me, and helped me just like process some things, and even they encouraged me to like seek more help, like when the areas where he would not feel like he was as qualified in. But it was just really important for me to just be able to just like let that stuff out, because I
Yeah.
was really at a place that was pretty low. And I have no problem talking more about that, but I don't want to just like be like, oh, is Jordan going to talk about a breakup now? It's like, oh, is that going to be the session? Like, like, I feel like I'm stepping into one of my own sessions here.
Yeah, no, that's great, man. I appreciate that. But yeah, I think like everything that Jordan said, like it goes both ways. Like I think it's cool because when we first met, I mean, obviously still we're the like same age gap as we were then, obviously. But but back then, like, I'm obviously older physically, and at the time, like also was older spiritually in terms of, where I was in my faith. But it's just been really cool because soon after that, it's not like all the way till now, but it's become more of a peer relationship than like me, it started off kind of me mentoring Jordan, and now it's, very much a peer
Oh yeah.
relationship to where we both help each other. And it's so cool because thinking back on the times where Jordan was going through that, and then, now when I'm going through a rough time, like Jordan's been there for me. And, I think like at the beginning of the year, I've had some very traumatic things happen with family stuff and health things and all these different things. And so, I got to a point in like March and April where, I didn't feel like myself at all. And I think like talking to Jordan specifically and some other people just kind of like reminded me like who I was and, what I needed to do to kind of get myself back to who I actually was. And so I think that and even being able to come out here, be with his family, like see his son and be, see how he is with his wife and his son has been really cool for me in a time of need. So I think that it's just cool to see, a decade apart. I'm there for Jordan. Jordan's here for me. Like, those are the type of relationships that you need in your life to kind of move forward, to heal, to do all these things. So I think that's been really cool. And it's kind of all started with, like we've talked about a couple episodes ago, right? Like, it started with something simple where we were able to bond over sports, over football, over doing silly things. And then it turned into us like having this theme scripture, and I even remember, at University of Florida, like we were sitting, if I'm not mistaken, sitting at, there's a really great spot where you could go to pray, to read at Lake Alice. And we went out there to pray. And that's kind of when we were like, yo, let's make this our theme scripture for our friendship. And it kind of did get us through those moments when we were like nervous to share our faith, nervous to speak in front of people, whatever it may be. And we were able to like kind of just have this simple phrase of, I'm with you heart and soul, like he said, or, I love you like myself, kind of thing. And so that's been really huge in our friendship. And I think it's kind of helped me to, through the years, open up to, I think, you find your person that is your best friend, someone you feel comfortable with that maybe you had never felt comfortable like sharing those things in your life. And then it kind of helps you open up to other people. And then that's how you kind of build community of, it's not just one person you can go to, but it's a group of men and women that you can trust. And I think that we've both been able to build that to where it started with us and, we're best friends, but now we have people in our respected places where we live and things like that. So, so that's been really cool. And I know that, through that, like he said, we have our own stories from before we met, and then even our own stories like after we met and we've moved to different places and things like that. So I just kind of want to jump into the authentic faith part of it. And I guess I'll start, but I know for me, Jordan mentioned when he was going through his tough time, like leaving the church he was a part of. So I know for me, like my faith was kind of my whole life, right? Like in terms of what I mean, my whole life is that from the time I was born, the time I can remember, I always went to church. Like my parents went to church. We always went growing up. It was just a known in our home. Like Sunday is the Lord's day. We're going to church. We're going to have people in our home after probably. And that day is going to be dedicated to God, but also our weeks are going to be dedicated to God. And so I think like with time, like Sunday, like church, getting with people, all those things, but the way we live our lives is still going to be dedicated to God. It's not just going to be on Sunday. And so that was my life growing up, like my best friends were in church, we were dedicated to sharing our faith, all these things, and my parents instilled that in me. And so, I kind of, what we would call become a Christian, studying the Bible, getting baptized. I did that when I was a freshman in high school. And by the end of my junior year, I kind of was like, man, like, I don't want to do this. Like, I want to do what all my friends are doing. I want to experience the world. I want to, do, be sinful, whatever you want to call it. And so I decided like, okay, I don't want to do this anymore. So my senior year of high school and then going into college, I kind of left that lifestyle behind and decided I'm going to do whatever I want. And, I wasn't like this crazy child that was like doing drugs and getting drunk all the time, but I got in, no, not at all, if you can believe it. But, I did get into things. And so, I went to college and I kind of just got into this hole in life where, again, I wasn't doing like what people would consider the craziest things. But I started drinking a lot, and I kind of realized that I didn't even like doing it. It was just that I was such a people pleaser at the time that it was like I wanted to fit in to this lifestyle. Yeah. And I didn't feel like I could fit into this lifestyle if I didn't at least drink, because I was like, I kind of told myself I'm never going to do drugs, which I stuck to that and never done drugs. But it was just this cycle where I'm like, I would lay down in bed at night and I was like, how did I get here? Like, what am I doing? You know? And it was just like, I didn't even enjoy most of it, you know? Like, there's times where I had fun or whatever, but for the most part, I was just lost. Like, you know, was sad, you know, when I would go to sleep. Um, and so I kind of decided, like, okay, like something needs to change. And I share all this to say, like, I don't want to share my entire story here. Like, we'll share our stories periodically throughout the podcast. But, you know, I had decided I want to go back to God. And I'll kind of jump forward a little bit because then is really when I had to learn, like, because I kind of thought, like, okay, I'll just go back to God. Like, I went to church my whole life. Like, I'll just go back to God, you know? But it's interesting because now I'm an adult, you know, and I'm away from home. My parents aren't there. Now, granted, my sister lived in the same city, which was a huge support. Um, but I realized, man, like I can't, you know, just wean off of my family's faith anymore. Like it has to be my own because I'm still in that environment where I was partying, I was drinking, you know, doing all these other things. But it had to be a mind shift now because I was in an environment where my parents, my sister, whatever, were all like, this is how we're going to live. But now I'm still on my own, you know, like for all intents and purposes, I was on my own and I could just go right back to that lifestyle whenever I wanted, you know? And so I really had to have my own conviction, my own faith. I had to learn the scriptures for myself and not just know what they said, but why do I believe this? Like, do I believe this? And so I think like that was huge for me. And honestly, I had to like relearn what manhood meant, you know, like that was the biggest thing for me too, is even just like a year and a half to 2 years kind of like down a path away from God, I had to relearn because what the world defines as a man is completely different than what God defines as a man. And I think that was huge for me at 18 when you're just learning like what you know that you know you're just becoming an adult. And so I just had to relearn like what I was trying the man I was trying to be before is not actually manhood. And so I think that was huge in terms of authentic faith was not people pleasing anymore because that's a huge I think that's a huge thing where, you know, being a man is trying to please other men, trying to put, you know, like that you're one of the guys or whatever, or you're trying to prove yourself to women, like, which is not what God calls us to do. And yeah, I had to learn like to be a leader, you know, to be my own person, but a person that followed God, and that was what my own person was. And so I think that that was the biggest thing for me. I think in authentic faith was like relearning what manhood meant. And so I'll leave it there and I'll pass it to Jordan. But I think that, you know, for me, it was just, you know, going down this path where I was like just trying to please my own desires, my own, and it just made me miserable, you know? And so I think that that's something I have to remind myself through life is that when I go down a path where I'm thinking, what does Chase want to do and nothing else? Like I'm not worried about anything else is when I really am the most sad and the most broken, the most lost. And so then when I go back to, okay, what is God calling Chase to be, then that's when I find purpose, I find happiness. And I think like what I said before in terms of like talking to Jordan through the beginning of my year with everything that was going on, he kind of helped remind me who and honestly, it wasn't even, I don't even think he knew he did that. But I think like talking to him and some other people kind of helped me to that and has helped me, you know, heal that aspect of the beginning of my year. So so yeah, I'll pass it back over to Jordan. Kind of let him share his story.
Yeah, well, you know, it's so interesting because I brought up this topic of like authentic faith, and I'm also just I was thinking about it on a lot of different levels around like on like yeah, what helps you, what do you believe in, and what do you feel grounded in, but also like I guess like yeah, like who you are at your core, and how do you like to show up in spaces, right, and not censoring yourself or not like feeling like you have to show up any other way, right? And that's a tricky thing, like to I guess trying to figure out like to navigate like what are the things that you like or versus like am I just liking things for other people, right?
Right.
Or am I just doing things for other people, or am I just trying to get along for the sense of like a community or establishing myself in a community? And you know, like I think back to a quote that I heard at a conference for like higher education, and you know, this person said, I can't be my most authentic self at work because my most authentic self doesn't want to work. I want to show up and be in my pajamas and maybe watch Netflix. And I was like, yeah, realistically, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to just like sit at my couch, maybe watch a show, watch Frasier, or play some PlayStation, right? Or just do whatever. Like that's what I really want to do. But is that also just authentic? Like, I mean, I think it was a helpful way of like thinking about it, but in the sense of like, and maybe authentic's not the right word, but it's like maybe it's thinking about like what feels like it speaks to who you are essentially.
Mhm.
And are you showing up as the essential person that you are, right? Like bringing your fullness of yourself, and not feeling like you have to be fake. Um, and I know that's something that I struggled with a lot. You mentioned people pleasing, but I feel like even to now, like I can still struggle with aspects of
Oh yeah.
that. Just because, like, like you want people to like you, but at the same time, like, to what extent are you doing that to where like it's not, you don't even know who you are anymore, and
Yeah.
you know what I mean, and so for me, I think the biggest thing I had to wrestle with when it came from like even understanding God, understanding just the values that I place is just like, I mean, I think undergraduate college is a great space to be able to explore that, like because it's a time where you're away from your parents and you're looking into different career fields, you're making different relationships, right? Like it's amazing. It's one of the reasons why I love working on colleges, and I think it's overwhelming. At least in my own
Yeah.
opinion, like I felt very overwhelmed, just being in those spaces. So I, I felt very much like I didn't really do a lot of exploration per se, like around like my identity per se, because it felt just too overwhelming. Like I was like, what's the I think I thought of things of like, what's the pathway to the easiest place, right? Like,
Yeah.
so what's the easiest degree that I can get? What's the easiest way to make friendships, kind of thing, right? But interestingly enough, and I do think that led to me meeting, like running into the church, but I
Mhm.
also think that led to some real authentic relationships that I just was like, oh, I didn't even plan that. So the way I like, started started the process of becoming a Christian was
Mhm.
like, I remember I was sitting at Florida A&M's campus at FAMU. Shout out FAMU, go Rattlers. You know what I'm saying? But I was sitting there as a freshman, and I was really rest. No, I the way I dealt with things, like if I felt very overwhelmed, is I would just retreat to my dorm, play some Xbox, like just be by myself. Just because I'm not comfortable in unfamiliar spaces. Like I can code switch pretty well. Like I've grown up in spaces where people don't reflect who I am, so I can show up and put on space, but it can be draining. So I retreated. So
Mhm.
at FAMU, like it was a new space, new environment, people were very friendly. People wanted to get to know, but I was like, it was just so overwhelming, it's so stimulating that I'm like, all right, I don't know if I want to like put myself out there, So I just stayed in my dorm room, and a friend of mine from back home, like, and I grew up in Gainesville, so Tallahassee is about 2.5 hours away from Gainesville. And I was sitting in my dorm room. A friend that I grew up from Gainesville called me and was like, "Yo, Jordan, like we're having a Bible talk on FAMU's campus." And I remember thinking to myself, I was like I heard Bible, and I grew up Christian, so I was like, sure, like I'll go, but I was more interested to see this guy because I knew him, but also this is a redhead white boy on Florida A&M's campus, historically black college, talking about Jesus. So I'm like, that's interesting. Let me just at least check that out. Like I don't know how this. I was thinking to myself, like, how will this go? And it actually led to some dope relationships I was able to make. Not like rekindle that relationship with him, but then also like and that wasn't Chase, by the way. I know I'm pointing to him right now, but that was not him. And so he checked his every red. But I was able to rekindle that relationship with with him. Shout out to my man Dardis.
I was gonna say, is that Michael Dardis?
Yeah, it was Dardis, and so and I grew up with Dardis, so that's why I was like, he was familiar, so I was open to that. But it led to me and some dope folks who was also studying at FAMU, and then we also got to chat and still connect and stay connected through that time because that was coming up on 14 years, which is crazy. But that started this journey of like, okay, what do I believe about the Bible? What do I believe about Jesus? What do I believe of, like, do I really accept these premises and these teachings? And do I really want to know how to do that or know how to follow him? And then fast forward, like I ended up transferring away from FAMU just from my own, like I was struggling academically and I wasn't being wise with my education. And so, which I aspects of that I do regret, and but also I think everything happens like well I think that was a way of like because without that process I wouldn't have met my boy here actually. So I ended up transferring back home to Gainesville and taking a gap year, and that's actually where he and I got to connect.
Yep.
And so it's but in that whole experience, I think what I felt grounded in was kind of seeing like, okay, what I did witness from people in these relationships is I'm witnessing people who are getting to know me, share the Bible, but also invite me into their home, you know, attend to needs that I had that I didn't even know I needed, right? Like in terms of like food, maybe a spot to stay, like just being warm, hospitable, and that was helpful for me to witness because the point of me witnessing that was so that I can do that to others in the future, right? Like it wasn't just so that I can receive all this, like, yeah, people want to feed me, people want to do this for me, people want to give me rides, all this stuff. It's like, all right, so are you prepared to also do that to others, like in terms of just serving, right? Like, and I think at the heart of an authentic faith for me is this aspect of are you willing to serve, right? And I think some of that challenge of that is, yes, you should serve endlessly. Like that's what Christ did. And I'm also not Christ. I also have energy that I run out of, right? Like, and also I had to navigate relationships in terms of where maybe the service felt like it was exploitive, right? Like in that people were taking advantage of me or people were having to have that conversation with me of like, hey, you're taking a lot and not giving enough, right? Like in those ways. And those are some hard conversations to have, but it helps to refine of like it helps me refine me to have those kinds of conversations of like assessing like, okay, what am I doing? And am I doing it for the right reasons? Or am I just kind of like, I don't know, mooching or anything like that? Right. And I know this is all over the concept around authentic faith, but I think about this aspect of who are you essentially, and are you learning, continue to doing this self-learning throughout this process? Because I think authentically, being an authentic person, being like I think of authentic as like original, as like like no one can replace who you are, right? Like, and to coordinate that with faith, where faith. Like in the Bible, there's a codified version of like what does that mean to live by faith, and what is it, and principles to follow within that faith. You'll find that aspects of who you are may not feel congruent to what the Bible says, right? And that's a hard thing to reconcile. This almost feels like I guess a contradiction, like to have authentic faith, because it's like
that's what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying? Like where you want to show up who you are, and I have this thing that's telling me this is how I should live, and that feels like it's not. It's telling me to be someone different, right? Like, so even just reconciling that to me is like I feel like that's part of the process of living an authentic faith. Of like, no, you shouldn't just accept those things blindly. You should wrestle with them and have conversations about those things. So yeah, I know that's, and I feel like there's a lot of places we can go. Honestly,
well,
I
think just to start where you just were, and then I do have something that you said earlier, but I think like part of authentic faith, right, is what you just said about how like this is a part of me, but it's contradictory to what the Bible is saying. I think part of authentic faith is acknowledging that this is who I am, but it's not what I want to be, right? So I think like again, we've talked about this on other episodes, is that you know, you have strengths I don't have, I have strengths that you don't have. And I think that that's the reason for that, right? Is that there's certain things where it's like this weakness in me, I'll acknowledge it and say, hey, like this is something I'm not very good at. I need help with it. I think that's part of authentic faith, right? Is that I'm not naturally good at it,
Yeah.
but can I go to someone that is naturally good
Yeah.
at it and they can help me better that part of myself?
Yeah.
And I think that's humility, right? It's you're not just saying like, all right, I'm just going to work really hard and get better at that on my own. And so that I don't have to tell anyone that I have a weakness. Like that's not authentic faith.
Yeah.
That's pride.
Yeah.
And so I think like that's a part of authentic faith is acknowledging I am weak here and I need Christ's help. I need, you know, friends' help. I need family's help, to get me better at this, you know, or help me be better in this way. And so I think that's a big part of authentic faith is not trying to pretend that you're good at everything that the Bible says, you know. It's, hey, I'm naturally good at this thing that Jesus is calling us to do, and that's great. But I'm also really weak in this area that Jesus calls us to do. So I need to surround myself with people that can help me be better in that way. And I do think sometimes too, we focus too much like on the things we're not good at in the sense that, you know, I had someone give me advice one time and sometimes I wrestled with this, but I think it was kind of cool as well, is that they were like, man, just, it's not to ignore the weaknesses in your character. That's not what he was saying. And not also not what I'm saying. It's that don't like just say I'm good at this, so I don't really need to focus on it. It's like hone it, like master that so that you can be a teacher to someone else. Earlier you were talking about like basically people like being hospitable and giving to you, and you were talking about how we need to give. Yeah. You know, I think that's the word you or serve. And so I think like something I thought about that I learned a few years ago down in Broward is that, you know, we're given blessings so that we can bless others. Like that's the reason for blessings. It's not like God's giving me this so I can just have it all to myself, right? Exactly. And so I think that it's kind of funny. Like while we were eating dinner, me, Jordan, and Emily, Jordan's wife, we were actually talking about like if we won the lottery, like like what would we do? And that actually just popped in my mind talking about this is that if we were given a blessing like the lottery, our mindset should be let me be a blessing to others. And it's not to mean that you can't, you know, get things for yourself or whatever, but it's like, how can I use this to be a blessing to someone else? Like maybe someone that's really in need, like things like that. And so I think that's a huge thing about authentic faith too. It's to not do it so that everyone sees you doing it, but it's like, if you see something as God gave me this as a blessing, how can I then like expand this to be a blessing to other people? And I think that that is a huge part of authentic faith, as well. And so, yeah, I think that that is something it's really hard, right? Because naturally, I think everybody, maybe not everybody, but a lot of us want to be like, man, I want people to see me blessing other people, you know, but that's something that is kind of fake, right? Like it's more, you're not really blessing other people. You want people to acknowledge you for blessing other people, you know?
Or having this great skill. Like I know
right.
Me,
yeah.
I know for me, a big thing that I still can struggle with is like, so there are aspects, there are times where I would be invited to preach and I would always compare myself in terms of like how well I communicate my points or speak on the principle of the matter or anything. And I will find myself even being envious of other preachers who just felt like their points were just they came across very it was confidence, honestly. Yeah, that's really what it was. I think I was envious of people's confidence that they had with using the scriptures well and communicating their thoughts well. And really I think I can have that with honestly with anyone in public speaking. And I don't think I'm terrible at it, but I think when I'm watching others, I'm like, man, they have that gift. That's awesome. Like I don't think of myself as like having that gift per se. And so like I would always compare like, you know, seeing especially those who are very edgy, extroverted, right?
Yeah.
Like your prototypical preacher that you can think of. Right? Like when they're speaking and it sounds very authoritative, right? Like not authoritarian, authoritative. Make sure I
clear that.
But like when they're speaking with confidence and like those conviction, I would always be like, man, that's a gifted person. Like I don't even think of like that's a spiritual person or
sure
a wise person or someone who knows who they are. And oftentimes, that's not the truth. In fact, sometimes that's the opposite, right? Like
Right.
sometimes that confidence is coming from a place of deep insecurity.
Mm.
But I myself, like, have been tricked or had developed this consciousness that speaking those ways or having that skill set, that's an authentic faith. That's like what we desire. And it didn't help that, like, within church environments, typically people like that did get recognized, right? Like
Right.
people would get either maybe promoted or hired for a staff position and put into leadership. And I'm not saying those people shouldn't. Like, those are gifts, like,
Yeah.
I do. But I also think I think I bit into this reality, or like that's what is needed, right? Like, to be this extrovert, to be this, I don't want to say loud one, but just this confident voice out there.
Sure.
And I think confidence is important.
Yeah.
I do.
Yeah.
But I also just think that's just because I don't have that, that doesn't mean my faith is inauthentic. Right? Like, and just because I don't speak that way, or I don't have those convictions, or I do have those things, but I maybe not communicate in those ways, that doesn't make my faith any less inauthentic.
Right.
Right? And I had to really, yeah, I had to just learn that over time too. Like, I think being in different ministries, so like going from Florida, after Florida, I moved up to New Jersey, and then from New Jersey to New York, and then from New York to Seattle. So, like, seeing different churches and different environments, different types of leaders helped as well with that too.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that I know we're kind of jumping back and forth between like faith and friendship and things like that. Something that, before I forget, to jump back to was, and it kind of does have to do with like this introvert extrovert thing, but in a different way. Is earlier you were talking about how, like, when you earlier in your college career when you were in Tallahassee, how like you would want to sink back and just go back to your dorm and just sink into yourself. And I think that something that I've learned, because I'm similar to Jordan in that way naturally, is that when I get overwhelmed or I get exhausted or whatever, I just want to like sink back, and there is no one I want to be around, is how I used to feel. Like, my best friend, I don't want to be around that. I just want to be by myself. And I think that if you are an introvert naturally, I think this is very, very important for you, is that you'll start to see when you build genuine, like deep, deep, deep friendships and connections. So for me, right, when I was in Broward, down in South Florida and working for the church, the days when I was really busy, like if I preached that day, if I was doing lessons that day, whatever it may be, after I was done, I was like done. But because I had such close friendships and close connections, there were certain people where going to their house or being around them was the same as me being by myself. Like, anybody else, it was like it felt overwhelming to be, but it was like if I wasn't by myself and I went to be with Jordan or, whatever, it was just as refreshing as being by myself. Does that make sense? Like, so I think like that's how I knew, like, okay, like these are true, genuine connections. And it doesn't mean that the people I didn't feel that way about weren't friends, but there's just these special friends and connections where it's like they can refill you as much as alone time can refill you.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's super cool, is that, you can build these connections to where it can actually change your natural state almost, like my natural state is I want to be by myself and recharge. But because I'm so close to Jordan, because I'm so close to XYZ person, like being with them also helps recharge my batteries, if that makes sense. So I think that that is really cool as well. So I don't know if that makes sense to you.
No, it does. It does. And it's got me thinking, like, I feel like there's people that you're going to feel like things are work.
Yeah.
Like, it's going to feel like work. And that feels very terrible to say.
Yeah, yeah.
But in terms of, I guess, like extroversion, introversion, right? Like there are relationships that you have with folks where they bring out, like, they help you feel more authentic. Like, there are people, like, when I'm with Chase, I may come off more as extroverted, right? Like, or I could have some folks, with some friends back from Florida or from Jersey that I'm around them, and you would think that I'm a totally different person, but they bring out a more, I guess, like, authentic side of me. Just like, right. And I think that's speaking to this aspect of, it doesn't feel like it's, I guess, work.
Yeah.
And that, right? Like, it just feels like just very natural to really just be myself. I feel like I have to like tiptoe and think like, what are they going to say about me, or what do I say to this person,
Yeah.
or just think through all just the awkward like a rigmarole that comes up of just like, okay,
Right.
how do I interact with this person?
Yeah, yeah.
Almost like forgetting like how to talk, right? But
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that, right? Like it's just kind of like, like I like what's yeah, that I'm just thinking about that in the sense of just showing up authentically and being around people that it doesn't feel like it takes energy from you,
Right.
Like,
Yep.
um, and church, I feel like is number one culprit of being a place where I don't want to say culprit, I don't want to say, that, but it's a place where, let's be honest, like we get off work for 6 days a week, right? Like you go to church, and it's a place that's supposed to be rejuvenating, and I think it is.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think we're not close to everybody in there.
Sure.
Right? Like it takes time to build those relationships, and I also don't think it's fair to expect yourself to do that.
Right.
Right. Like I think that is kind of like where the fakeness comes up, or the inauthenticity comes up. Is like feel like you have to be like super close to everyone.
Yeah.
At the same time, like it feels like it feels like contradiction maybe, but it's like I feel like in order to get to those types of friendships, you have to put yourself out there. You have to kind of explore, and sometimes it's light,
Mm-hmm.
like what we mentioned in the first episode of like it could be something as like watching the same movie, and you both find out this quote that's like very rarely acknowledged, right? But you two bond over that and know
Yeah.
exactly how to finish it. Like that can be the start of something that's really dope,
Yeah.
right? Like thinking of the scene of Step Brothers, right? Like, what's our favorite dinosaur? Velociraptor, right? Like it's kind of stuff like that, right? Like, but but oftentimes like it can also be like it takes years, like
Mhm.
of just like you know what, I'm gonna invite this person over to my home and invite me over and just have conversation, and then
Yeah.
before you know it, you do discover a good friendship with someone,
Right.
That doesn't feel like work anymore.
Yeah.
Too,
Yeah.
right? Like so.
Yeah, and I think that I think everyone listening can like understand the feeling of it's become like a meme almost, or like a joke of between especially millennials, is that it's like, you're happy when someone cancels plans, or like, you're like trying to find an excuse of why you can't make
Ooh.
this outing or that outing. But like what we're talking about is you have those friends, like, Jordan and I live far right now, but if we were in the same city, like I can't think of a time where if Jordan was trying to make plans, I would be like, oh man, like, I don't want to go see Jordan. Like I don't think I've ever had that thought of like me and Jordan's friendship where I'm like, oh, like I gotta go see Jordan today. I forgot. Like that would never happen. And I think that both of those feelings are okay in the sense that, like Jordan's saying, you can't be super close to every single person in your church, in your community, at your school, whatever. And I don't think that means that you're fake if you like are having a conversation with those people that, you might not get along with for 5 hours at a time. You know what I mean? But I do think it is important to have those friendships where you feel like what we're talking about, they're rejuvenating, they're life giving, they're ones where it's like you would never say no to like hanging out with that person. And I think that, as you get older, like you need a solid circle of people like that,
And there are some folks there are some folks who are extroverted, right? Who feel close to everyone, and they let themselves out like that in those ways. And I gotta be careful not to envy them, but I can't help but feel that too.
Couldn't be me.
Well, I do, man. I'm just like you may not, but I envy it in the sense of like, man, that's such a dope skill, like to feel like you can let yourself be authentic with everyone.
Mhm.
And I know that's genuine. I've met folks like that who just thrive not only around a lot of people, but also establish so many deep touch points and connections with people. And again, it's I think the authentic faith aspect is recognizing the skills that you are good at, and not being envious of others for theirs, but just like like seeing like, okay, maybe I would like to grow in that. Let me ask them for that. Like how do they build their friendships, right? Or I want to learn how to be able to speak better, or I want to learn how to, just work on my car. Like like so.
Yeah. And I think it's cool too, because it's like, you have to recognize with yourself too that there's certain aspects that sometimes you can feel like you're being fake, but really it's just your capacity. And what I mean by that is like, for instance, we've talked about how we are both naturally more introverted than extroverted, but both of us also have very extroverted tendencies, especially Jordan. And so,
Yeah.
but for me, like the way describe it to people, and I kind of felt like almost uncomfortable with this for a while when I was younger, is that I am good at interacting with people. Like if I'm at church, like I'm good at like I could talk to anybody in the room and I feel like I could connect with them in some way. I'm good at it, but internally I'm like, get me out of here, like in the sense of not like I don't want to talk to this person or I don't like this. It's not that at all. It's just that it drains me so much. And there's some people, like you were saying, that extroverts, that's how they get their energy. Is like, I want to talk to everybody in the room. And I'm like, I can talk to everybody in the room and I feel like have a genuine conversation with them. So I have to realize that that's not like fake of myself, because sometimes I need to deny myself and talk to people. And I actually felt that the most actually whenever I preached, because, naturally people want to talk to the person that spoke and like ask them a question or tell them what they liked or, give them a pointer, whatever, all sorts of stuff, And so I think that those days I was like, man, it's important for me to like, cause I'm someone that I loved to preach, but I hate being the center of attention. And it almost like it sounds it sounds contradictory, but like I love learning material and like teaching it to people to help them really understand it. I love that. But I don't like to be the center of attention. And I actually dreaded like being flooded after, and I loved like having a one-on-one conversation and have like a deep conversation about like what I preached on or what they learned. Like, I think that's super cool. But I have to realize that that's not like fake of me. It's just how I operate, Yeah. And I think it's important to deny myself sometimes and have those conversations with people. But I think it's okay too, where you get to a point where you're like, man, I gotta retreat and I gotta, rejuvenate. And whether that's like going hang out with a great friend or just having some alone time. And so I think that make sure you understand like taking care of yourself in the way you need to get taken care of is not like inauthentic, like what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I appreciate you naming that, right? Like it's this piece around making sure that if you find yourself being drained in these environments, or if they're so overstimulating, taking those steps away is important. Self-care is important in that. And like, you mentioned like, you can have those conversations. I feel like the opposite in the way of like when I'm in those church environments, I want to talk to everyone, but I am so like I'm in my head trying to think of like if I ask them this question, they're gonna say this, and I need to have this prepared. That is crazy, but that's how I think, and yet it's like I'm trying to like telegraph the conversation in my head, like to try to make sure that that leads to a great outcome. Actually, I should just be present and just say, hey, right? Like it doesn't have to be that deep, and it doesn't have to be that stressful. But I think internally I make it more stressful than it is, and some of that can be anxiety too, right? Which, if that is you, definitely make sure you have a supportive network within that. But I think that's aspects of that. I think that come up for me when I'm in those interactions. I'm like, oh, so what was it? And so you'll see me even in like church services, like after service is over, like I'm looking around, people are smiling. I'm like, but I don't go up to people and be like, yo, what's your name? How you doing? I need to. Like, well, maybe not need is the word, but it's just I think I see myself wanting to be that person.
Right.
I feel like I get stopped by my own insecurities of like just saying hey to people.
Right. Yeah. Well, we're coming up on 50 minutes, so we'll close out here. But yeah, I know, bro. It just flies by. But man, I've enjoyed this conversation, and I think I want to do a better job of making sure towards the end to let the audience know, man, like anything that stuck out to you, any question you may have, any advice you may have, any suggestion for us you may have, we'd love for you to drop that in the comments. It will help us just connect with the audience better, but also know like what we want to talk about in the future. We're constantly thinking about what are we going to talk about next, and we have a list, but we also are trying to go off the cusp too. Like if something is on our hearts, we want to talk about. Like tonight, we talked like a couple minutes before, and we are like, let's talk about authentic faith. I think that would be great, and our friendship. And since we're here in person, I think that was a perfect topic. And so, if you have any questions, comments, prayer requests, anything like that, please drop it in the comments, in the DMs, wherever it is that you feel comfortable putting it. And then also, if you're enjoying the podcast, please share, please like, subscribe. If you're not on the YouTube, that's really where we'd like you to go, is the YouTube. But we really appreciate wherever you're listening. Give us a rating if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, and make sure you subscribe if you're on YouTube. But till next week, In With The New featuring Jordan Shannon. We love you guys.
We out.